Hello, friends. Welcome to our YouTube channel, a place where science whispers softly and stories help you sleep. Here, your mind is invited to wander gently as we explore the wonders of the brain, of thought, of memory, of change, all in the quiet language of rest. Tonight, we'll take another peaceful step into the story of you and how your mind rewires with every thought, every feeling, every breath. So find a comfortable place. Let the world slow down and allow your thoughts to drift like stars across a night sky. Let's begin. There is a quiet hum inside you, soft, continuous, and ancient. It hums behind your thoughts, behind your senses, behind even your awareness of it. It is your brain at work, not in a loud, mechanical way, but in a living, growing way, like the slow reaching of roots underground or the unfolding of petals before the sun. You breathe in, and the breath stirs something within. Not just the lungs or the chest, but thoughts, gentle and unfinished, ripple across your awareness. And as they do, something invisible happens. A whisper between cells, a signal passed from one neuron to the next, a light-footed dance across a bridge of synapses. Your brain is not a fixed machine. It is a garden, soft, fertile, responsive. And thought is the gardener. Every time you learn, feel, notice, or even imagine, your brain shifts ever so slightly. Tiny roots take hold. New shoots begin to form. Connections thicken like vines twisting towards sunlight. This is neuroplasticity, a long, gentle word for something astonishingly simple. Your brain's ability to change itself, to reshape, to reroute, to reinvent. It is the way your mind adapts to new experiences, new knowledge, new emotions, not overnight and not always evenly, but steadily, patiently, like waves smoothing stone. Imagine for a moment that your brain is a vast forest. Each neuron is a tree. Each thought is a trail of light, weaving through the trunks. When you think something once, a faint path appears, like a footstep in tall grass. When you think it again and again, the path deepens. The grass bends. A trail becomes a road. This is how habits form. This is how memories settle in. And it's also how you can change, by choosing a new path and walking it again and again until the old one grows over and the new one feels like home. Your brain does this not only with thought, but with motion, with language, with emotion. Each part speaks its own dialect of electricity, and together they rewrite the map of who you are. Even in rest, the forest of your mind is alive, pruning, branching, healing, growing. And it all begins with one thing: attention. Where your attention goes, change begins. When you focus on a task, a feeling, or an idea, you are watering certain connections. You are lighting up one corner of the forest, and in that light, new branches may grow. But plasticity isn't just about growing. It's about letting go too. Your brain prunes what it doesn't use, not to punish, but to preserve energy, to clear space for something new. It forgets to make room for learning. It lets go to make space for becoming. This is why change feels slow. Because real transformation isn't the sudden leap. It's the quiet shedding. The way a tree drops leaves in fall to grow differently in spring. Even now, as you lie still, your brain is adjusting itself. Not in grand gestures, but in the subtle way a riverbed shifts as the current flows through. You are not fixed. You are not finished. You are soft, like clay warmed by the sun. You are flexible, like thread being woven into new patterns. This is the truth at the heart of neuroplasticity. You are allowed to change, and you do, all the time. Each new language you try to learn, each breath you take to calm yourself, Each story you tell yourself about who you are, they all leave a mark. They all send your neurons reaching. And over time, those small marks form architecture, not rigid like stone, but soft, like scaffolding made of breath and light. An architecture that bends and sways with the seasons of your life, that adjusts to sorrow and expands for joy, that rebuilds after grief and reshapes in wonder. The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and memory. To it, the act of thinking is real enough to change things. So when you visualize, when you dream, when you remember differently, you are sculpting from the inside out. And sometimes change comes from the quietest acts, the choice to pause, the courage to feel, the willingness to listen to a new idea. All of it leaves traces. It is late, the room is quiet, your body still, your breath slow, and within this stillness, something faint and radiant begins to stir. A flicker in the dark, not outside, but within. Imagine the vast sky of your mind. Now fill it with stars. But these are not burning balls of gas. They are neurons, the elemental cells of thought. There are billions of them inside you, each one glowing with potential, each one waiting for a signal, a story, a spark. Neurons are not alone. They exist to connect. Like fireflies pulsing in the woods, they blink their lights toward others, sending messages across invisible bridges called synapses, tiny spaces where change begins. Every thought you have, every memory, every intention is a symphony of these little flickers. Not random, not chaotic, but orchestrated, rhythmic, alive. One neuron sends an electrical signal down a long, slender branch. When it reaches the edge, it releases a chemical messenger, a neurotransmitter, which drifts across the synapse and whispers to the next neuron. Begin. And so it does. A thought is born. This is how you remember your name, how you learn to walk, how you recognize a face, or feel warmth when you hear a familiar voice. It all begins with the quiet, electric language of neurons. You've had these neurons your whole life. In fact, you were born with nearly all the neurons you will ever have. But what changes, what truly evolves, is the way they connect. Their wiring, their branching, their communication. That is what grows, adapts, reshapes. That is what makes your brain yours. Each neuron has a body, and from that body stretch delicate arms, called dendrites, that reach like roots toward incoming signals. On the other side, a long tail called an axon sends the signal outward, like a lighthouse sending light across the sea. These shapes are real, not poetic guesses, but visible structures, traced in stained slices of brain tissue and captured under microscopes. They are beautiful, twisting like coral, reaching like trees, branching in infinite variation. And like trees in a forest, neurons thrive when connected. The more they communicate, the stronger their bonds become. This strengthening is called long-term potentiation, and it is the physical form of learning. When you practice something, a language, a song, a habit of thought, the neurons involved become more tightly linked. Their conversation grows faster, more fluid, as if the path between them has been cleared and paved. You may not notice it happening, but inside, your brain is becoming more itself. Even now, as you listen to these words, a gentle shift is taking place. Your neurons respond to language, to rhythm, to the suggestion of an image. They light up when you imagine, when you remember, when you feel something unexpected. In fact, some neurons have jobs so specific they only activate when you see a familiar face, or even just imagine it. Scientists once discovered a neuron in a person's brain that responded only to images of a particular actress, not anyone else, just her. It came to be called the Jennifer Aniston neuron, and though it sounds whimsical, it revealed something profound. Your neurons are not just general-purpose wires. They are tuned, shaped by your experiences, organized by meaning. And the more you interact with something, a person, an idea, a feeling, the more dedicated your neurons become to it. Like friends who grow closer the more they speak, the stronger their connection becomes. This is how thought becomes memory, how experience becomes identity, how attention becomes architecture. And when neurons are not used, they grow quiet. The brain conserves its energy, reclaiming unused circuits, like a garden trimming back unwatered vines. But even in that pruning, there is beauty, because it means you are never truly stuck. Even well-worn patterns of thought can soften. Even old pain can lose its sharpness as the neurons that carried it begin to fade. What fires together, wires together. This simple truth holds deep power, because it means that you have some say in what your mind becomes. When you choose to focus on kindness, on breath, on new learning, you are choosing which stars to feed, which signals to strengthen, which stories to remember. And this choice, though small in the moment, is the heartbeat of neuroplasticity. It is how your brain, moment by moment, writes itself. And while neurons are small, so small that thousands could fit on the head of a pin, and in rest, in sleep, these neurons don't shut down. They reorganize, they file memories, replay patterns, strengthen the connections formed during the day. Sleep is not a pause. It is part of the process. As you lie still, neurons pulse on. They glow in the dark, speaking a language of electricity and chemistry, making meaning out of experience. They do not ask for permission. They simply do what they were made to do. Connect, communicate, remember, adapt. And so tonight, you are not just resting, you are rewiring. You may not feel it. These changes are too small, too subtle. But beneath the quiet of your breath, a soft network is shifting, like constellations rearranging overhead. You are made of these stars. You are made of their stories. And as one signal leaps to the next, as one flicker meets another, the sky inside you brightens just a little more. What you think, you become. What you repeat, you strengthen. And what you notice, even now, shapes the very forest of your mind. And so, with neurons quietly pulsing in moonlit rhythm, you wonder. There is a trail inside your mind. It is quiet now, like an old footpath through a familiar forest. You may not remember choosing it, and yet your thoughts travel it often. So often, in fact, that it feels like it's always been there. This trail is not made of earth or stone. It is formed from repetition. From every time you've thought a thought, spoken a word, reacted the same way, or reached for the same comfort. Neurons fire, and then fire again, and again and again, until they no longer ask whether to fire. They simply do. This is how habits form, not just of action, but of thought. Your brain, always efficient, remembers the paths it has taken before, and with every return, the trail deepens. The grass parts, the soil firms. The direction becomes automatic. Some paths are beautiful, the way you smile at kindness, or breathe deeply when you're overwhelmed. Others may be less gentle, like the reflex to worry or the urge to retreat when things get hard. But here's what matters most. No path is permanent. The trails in your mind are flexible, not paved in stone, but worn softly into place by footsteps. Yours. Each thought, each action, each choice is a footfall. And even if the old trail feels too well worn to change, it can begin to fade if you simply stop walking it. This is the quiet miracle of repetition. It's not just about forming habits, it's about rewiring. Every time you try something new, every time you pause and choose differently, a new path begins to form. At first, it is slow going. The grass is tall, the way unclear. The neurons involved are not used to speaking to each other yet, but with time and gentle practice, they learn. They reach toward each other. Their connection strengthens. A new trail appears, soft but real. And the more you return to it, the clearer it becomes. Eventually, it feels like the old one did. Natural, easy, known. You may have noticed this in your own life. The way a daily walk becomes something your body expects, or how gratitude, once awkward, begins to flow more freely. The way forgiveness, though difficult, can become easier over time. Not because the past changes, but because the trail through it has shifted. Repetition is not mindless. It is not mechanical. It is the music of becoming. When you practice a new skill, learning a word in another language, playing a simple melody, gently reshaping a thought pattern, your neurons adjust their rhythm. They fire more smoothly. The gaps between them narrow. And slowly, your brain becomes better at the thing you are asking it to do. This is called myelination, a process where the trails you travel most are wrapped in a fatty sheath, like insulation around a wire. It makes the signal travel faster, more efficiently, more confidently. You don't need to understand the biology to feel it. It's why a skill becomes second nature. Why you can ride a bike or type your name without thinking. It's why old habits feel hard to break, and why new ones feel clumsy at first. But clumsiness is not failure. It is simply the feel of a new path underfoot. It is your brain, unsure but trying, stretching unfamiliar roots into soil. And each time you return, you deepen that new groove. Even a single repetition can be enough to begin. Tonight, as you lie here, your thoughts still move, following familiar trails, but also branching gently in new directions. Perhaps you notice a habit forming, a question you ask yourself more often now, a pause before a reaction, a shift in tone, in patience, in the way you speak to yourself. That, too, is repetition. And it matters, because every time you speak to yourself with gentleness, your brain listens, and it learns, and it repeats. And this is how change begins, not as a loud declaration, but as a whisper, repeated until it feels like truth. So be patient with your paths. Be soft with your rewiring. It does not matter how many times you have walked the old trail. You are allowed to step off of it at any moment. You are allowed to wander, to try a new way, to forget, and to begin again. Because every footprint counts, every choice, every return to a new thought or a kinder habit is a step into the possible. And as you fall into sleep, the steps you've taken today echo gently through the pathways of your mind. The trails remember, the neurons respond, the garden shifts, and somewhere in the quiet, you begin to wonder. You've been taught, perhaps, to fear the word failure, to avoid it, to hide it, to see it as something final. But your brain tells a different story. To your neurons, failure is not an end, it is a beginning. In the quiet space after a mistake, your brain leans in, curious, alert. It does not flinch. It gathers signals. It asks, what happened? What can I change? And then it does just that, gently, slowly, but with purpose. This is how you learned to walk, not by getting it right, but by falling, and falling again. And each fall whispered a lesson. Adjust your balance. Try again. Shift your weight. Your brain adjusted because it was designed to. Because it learns best not through perfection, but through trying, missing, and trying again. Inside your brain, every attempt, successful or not, sends electrical signals racing across synapses. And when a mistake occurs, something beautiful happens. The brain pauses. It detects an error in the pattern, and it marks that moment as important. That pause is called an error signal, a burst of activity that lights up your anterior cingulate cortex, a part of the brain that notices when things don't go as expected. It doesn't scold. It doesn't shame. It simply signals. Pay attention. Something new is happening here. And so the brain does. It leans into the error. It strengthens the surrounding circuits. It asks the body to try a different motion. It reshapes the way neurons fire next time. Like a musician adjusting their hands after missing a note, or a child experimenting with balance after a stumble, the brain turns failure into guidance. This is adaptive learning, the way your mind improves by encountering difficulty, by making effort, by reaching the edge of what it knows and then stepping a little further. You do not grow by avoiding mistakes. You grow by dancing with them, by falling gracefully into new understanding, by allowing failure to be a teacher, not a wall. Think of a baby bird learning to fly. The first flight is not smooth. Wings flap too soon or too late. But with each awkward attempt, the neurons governing balance and motion strengthen their grip, until one day, the bird is airborne, not because it avoided falling, but because it embraced the falls as part of the rhythm. In your own life, you may have felt this too. The first time you tried something hard, a new skill, a new language, a new way of being. At first, it felt clumsy, foreign, the path uncertain, and perhaps you made mistakes. Perhaps you faltered. But each time you returned, each time you allowed yourself to try again, your brain recorded the attempt. It adjusted. It learned. Even emotional learning follows this pattern. When you speak harshly and feel regret, your brain takes note. It connects the action to the consequence, and in time, it encourages gentler responses. This is emotional plasticity, the way your inner world adapts through reflection and feeling. Failure, here too, becomes feedback, a soft light cast over your inner patterns. And so the next time you feel the sting of error, remember, your neurons are listening, not judging, just adjusting, always adjusting. This is especially true in the presence of effort. Studies show that the brain responds more strongly to failure when you are truly trying, when you are engaged, when you care, because effort opens the door to learning. And just as repetition carves a path, error carves direction. It tells your brain where the edges are, where the trail bends, where something new is possible. This may be why creative people so often speak of failure not as defeat, but as discovery. The wrong brushstroke that led to a masterpiece, the flawed hypothesis that led to a breakthrough, the missed note that revealed a new harmony. Your brain, too, is creative, not in the artistic sense, but in the way it constantly reshapes itself based on the raw material of your experience, even the uncomfortable parts. And just as muscles grow through micro-tears, so what if you welcomed your mistakes? What if you greeted them with curiosity? What if you felt the sting, but stayed present enough to listen? Your brain is not embarrassed by error. It is enlivened by it. It uses mistakes to guide your growth, not by forcing, but by adjusting. Subtle, soft, continuous. And that, too, is a kind of intelligence. Not the kind that always knows, but the kind that is willing to learn. As you rest now, perhaps your thoughts drift to moments of imperfection. A conversation you wish had gone differently, a goal unmet, an old regret. Let them come, if they do, and let them pass through gently. They are not stains on your story. They are the very soil from which growth emerges. You do not have to correct everything at once. You do not have to fix yourself. There is no brokenness here. Only a system that learns, that listens, that adapts. Even now, as you sleep, your brain may be revisiting today's mistakes, not to punish, but to rewire. It files them away, not as failures, but as future guides. And somewhere within, the lesson lands. Softly, quietly, a new path begins to form. You are not the sum of your successes. You are the rhythm of your becoming. One breath, one attempt, one rewiring at a time. And now, as this chapter drifts toward silence, a quiet thought lingers. There is a story you carry, a soft and winding thread of moments stretching behind you like a trail in the mist. This is your memory, your personal history. But it may not be what you think it is. You do not remember your life like a camera. There are no perfect recordings, no crystal-clear archives. Instead, memory is more like painting in fog. Each time you remember, you brush in new color. You shift the shape of what once was. You aren't replaying the past. You're reconstructing it. This may feel strange, even unsettling. But your brain is not broken. It is beautifully adaptive. Because memory was never meant to be exact. It was meant to be useful, alive, flexible. Every time you recall something, a moment, a name, a feeling, your brain pulls together scattered pieces from different corners of itself. There is no single shelf where that memory is stored. Instead, like fireflies gathering, neurons across your brain light up in unison. And just for a moment, they reassemble a version of the past. This process is called reconsolidation. It means that memory is an act of rebuilding, not retrieving. And in that rebuilding, change happens. Sometimes subtly, a detail softens, a tone shifts, a feeling grows quieter. Other times, the shift is greater. A memory once painful becomes peaceful. Not because the facts changed, but because you did. Because the way your brain processes that moment now moves through different pathways shaped by healing, time, or reflection. And just like footprints in the sand, memories can be reshaped by the waves. They remain, but not as fixed impressions. They shift, stretch, deepen, fade. This is not a flaw. It is a feature of a brain designed to keep adapting, even to the past. And yet, even as memories shift, they still anchor you. They help you understand who you are. They guide your choices, your relationships, your sense of self. But your sense of self is not one fixed image. It is a story, told and retold, edited gently by your inner narrator. Even your earliest memories are not pure. They are shaped by stories others told, by photos you've seen, by what you needed to believe. And so, memory becomes not a mirror, but a map, a hand-drawn guide to where you've been and who you've been becoming. Maps are useful, but they are never exact. They leave things out. They emphasize certain roads. They tell you how to get somewhere, not what the weather was like when you arrived. And the brain does the same. It simplifies, fills in gaps, adds emotional shading to give memory depth and meaning. This emotional tone is powerful. Two people can remember the same moment with wildly different feelings because the brain colors memory with emotion. And the stronger the emotion, the more vivid the memory becomes. That is why certain moments return to you again and again, not because they are the most important, but because they were felt most deeply. But even these vivid memories can soften. The brain allows this. It is capable of healing, of reframing. Therapists use this principle to help people reshape traumatic memories, not to forget, but to find new meaning, new neural paths through old pain. When you return to a memory with safety, with insight, with compassion, your brain rewires its emotional associations. What once felt sharp may now feel spacious. What once closed you in may now open something in you. And when you forget, that too has purpose. Your brain does not keep everything. It forgets to protect you, to make room, to prioritize what matters now. Forgetting is a quiet, natural clearing, a pruning of unused branches so others may thrive. Think of all you do without remembering: walking, breathing, reading. These are built into deeper structures, muscle memory and procedural memory, freed from conscious effort, so your mind can wander elsewhere. And where it wanders, new memory begins. Tonight, as you drift into rest, your brain begins the subtle work of memory consolidation. It reviews the day's events, sorting, sifting, saving. It replays moments in dreams, not always literally, but symbolically, weaving new insights into old memories. This is how insight happens, how perspective grows, how you can wake up understanding something you didn't grasp the day before. In sleep, your hippocampus, the brain's memory maker, plays back the day's experiences. Like a quiet librarian, it chooses what to archive, what to let fade. Some of what fades is simply no longer needed. Some of what remains is what shaped you most. You are not a perfect archive. You are a living organism that stores meaning, not just facts. And in that storing, you are free to grow. So the next time a memory surfaces, whether joyful or painful, whether vivid or soft, know that it is not fixed. It is not final. You can sit with it. You can reshape it. You can offer it a new perspective. Your brain allows for that. It always has. It is not bound by what was. It is bound to what becomes. And so tonight, as memories drift like mist across your mind's quiet field, you might ask, beneath every thought you think, beneath the patterns you repeat and the memories you recall, there is feeling. Not always loud, not always named, but always present. Your emotions are not interruptions to your thinking. They are part of the architecture. They are color in the blueprint. They shape the brain's structure just as much as repetition or attention. You feel first, then you think, and in that order, your brain begins its work. Imagine your thoughts as rivers, some wide, some narrow, some slow-moving, some rushing. Now imagine emotion as the rain. It determines how full the river flows, how far it spreads, how deeply it carves into the land. Joy, when it arrives, widens your attention. Your brain's reward system, guided by neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, lights up like sunrise. Neurons fire with ease. New connections form more quickly. Learning becomes easier. The brain, for a moment, becomes more open, more alive. Love has a similar effect. When you feel safe and connected, your brain releases oxytocin, a chemical that fosters trust, bonding, and emotional regulation. It encourages plasticity in areas tied to empathy and understanding. These feelings, joy, love, awe, do not just visit. They build. They nourish new circuits. They strengthen your ability to connect, to imagine, to change. And then there is fear. A different kind of rain. Fear narrows your focus. It makes the world feel smaller, more urgent. The amygdala, your brain's emotion sentinel, becomes more active. It watches for threat. It remembers past pain. It triggers survival responses that override slower, more reflective thinking. This is useful. Sometimes, fear helps you survive. But when it lingers too long, when it becomes the default weather in the mind, it floods your internal landscape. It makes plasticity harder. It favors the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. The same is true for sadness, anger, shame. These emotions have value. They carry messages, point to needs unmet. But when left unprocessed, they become patterns. And your brain, always adapting, adjusts to those patterns. It builds neural pathways around them. Not because you chose it, but because the brain builds based on repetition, on emotional intensity, on survival. But there is good news. Emotions can be reshaped. Just as they shape you, you can shape your relationship to them. The process begins with awareness, a soft noticing, the ability to feel without becoming. To say, I am feeling anxious, instead of, I am anxious. It's a small difference in language, but a great shift in wiring. That shift activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps with perspective, with choice, with reflection. It calms the amygdala. It tells your nervous system, you are safe. And when you feel safe, your brain can. You may not be able to control every emotion, but you can learn to ride them like waves instead of walls. You can let them move through without clinging or resisting. You can breathe into their shape and watch them reshape you. Even now, as you rest, your brain remembers your emotional experiences. Not just the content, but the tone. Not just the memory, but how it felt to be inside it. And these feelings leave marks. They influence how new memories are formed, how new thoughts are interpreted. Whether a challenge is seen as a threat or an opportunity, emotions teach your brain how to relate to the world. This is why environments of safety and care are so powerful. A nurturing presence, even one memory of kindness, can open pathways long closed. It can ease the nervous system. It can invite trust. And trust at the level of the brain means plasticity. Love, not just romantic love, but the deep sense of being seen and accepted, is one of the most potent shapers of your neural landscape, and it doesn't always need to come from others. Your brain responds to self-compassion just as it does to compassion from others. When you soothe yourself with kindness, when you allow your emotions to rise and fall without judgment, your body relaxes, your brain opens, the landscape softens. Over time, this becomes a new emotional pattern. You begin to expect gentleness. You begin to return to it the way roots return to water. And in this place of calm, change becomes possible. New feelings can emerge, not as forced positivity, but as true, organic growth. Hope, curiosity, gratitude, peace. These too are emotions. They too shape the brain. They make you more receptive, more flexible, more connected to yourself and others. So tonight, if you feel anything deeply, whether sadness or serenity, know that your brain is not resisting it. It is listening. It is recording. It is adapting. You are allowed to feel. You are designed to feel. And in feeling, you are building something. A new path. A more compassionate reflex. A nervous system that trusts its own rhythms. You are not made of logic alone. You are rivers and rain, storms and sun. You are shaped by what you feel, and you are shaping it too. So as you rest now, the emotional weather within you begins to settle. The sky clears, the ground steadies, and in the quiet that follows feeling, your brain does its quietest, deepest work. And somewhere inside, you begin to wonder. There is a silence your body remembers. The stillness between heartbeats, the pause between breaths. It is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of presence. In this stillness, something sacred happens. Your brain listens, not outwardly, but inward. It turns its awareness toward itself. This is not sleep, though sleep is sacred too. This is wakeful rest, a quieting of mental noise, a softening of thought, a gentle settling into now. In moments like this, sitting beside a window, walking slowly under trees, lying with your eyes closed after a long day, your brain begins to hum in a different rhythm. This rhythm has a name. It is called the default mode network, a set of regions in your brain that become active when you are not focused on tasks, when you are daydreaming, reflecting, letting go. And in these moments, your brain begins a quiet kind of work. It integrates, it connects, it sorts through memories and thoughts not with urgency, but with curiosity. This is when insight often arrives, not in the striving, but in the stillness after it. The aha moment that bubbles up when you least expect it. Because your brain is always building. Even in rest, especially in rest, the architecture continues. Stillness allows the mind to see patterns it missed in motion. It creates space for disconnected ideas to touch, for distant memories to return, for your self-awareness to deepen. This is why practices like mindfulness and meditation aren't just spiritual. They are biological. They change the brain. Studies show that even a few weeks of regular mindfulness practice can thicken gray matter in regions responsible for emotional regulation, attention, and empathy. The prefrontal cortex becomes more active, supporting clearer decision-making. The amygdala, the center of fear and reactivity, shrinks in volume, softening the stress response. This is neuroplasticity in action, shaped not by doing, but by being. When you sit quietly with your thoughts, watching them rise and fall like waves, you are not being unproductive. You are rewiring. You are building resilience. You are restoring balance. And it's not just meditation. Any form of intentional stillness, a deep breath, a moment of noticing, a walk without distraction, can begin this shift. Because the nervous system listens to more than words and thoughts. It listens to rhythm, to breath, to the spaces in between. It is comforted by stillness. It learns safety from calm. And the more safety it feels, the more capacity it has to grow. This is why rest is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. Your brain is not a machine. It does not thrive on endless productivity. It needs quiet to integrate the noise. Think of a forest after the rain, still, glistening, alive with unseen motion. Beneath the surface, roots are drinking, leaves are opening, growth is happening. Your brain is the same. In quiet moments, growth does not stop. It becomes deeper, subtler. Stillness is not doing nothing. It is doing something essential, something invisible, something transformative. This is especially true when your mind has been overworked, when thoughts race, when stress tightens your body, when every moment feels like movement. In those times, stillness feels difficult, even unnatural, but that is when it is most needed. Because beneath the tension, your brain is yearning for space to breathe. And when you give it that space, something beautiful unfolds. Your thoughts slow, your breath deepens, your nervous system signals, I am safe. And in that safety, the brain lets go of protective loops. It softens its grip on old beliefs. It allows new possibilities to take root. Even just a few moments of silence can begin to calm the noise and reset your internal compass. This is how healing begins. Not always with grand gestures, but with small stillnesses repeated with care. So tonight, as you lie here, quiet, eyes soft, breath moving gently, know that your brain is listening. It is shifting, not through force, but through presence. Let your thoughts come and go. Let them swirl like wind through grass. You do not need to chase them. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness beneath them, the silence between. And in this silence, your brain begins to reorganize, to reprioritize, to lay new tracks in the sand. The default mode network glows gently. It reviews your memories. It connects today to yesterday. It prepares tomorrow's path, not with urgency, but with patience. Stillness makes space for vision, not the kind of seeing with the eyes, but the kind of knowing that rises from within. It is here that purpose begins to form, not as something to chase, but as something that emerges from listening. And in this moment, as you begin to drift, you may notice something subtle, a sense of ease, of spaciousness, of trust. Trust that your brain is not static, that it doesn't need to be busy to be alive, that in stillness it is becoming. So rest now, not because you must stop, but because you are making space for something new. And as the silence deepens, a question begins to take shape, gentle and full of wonder. In the quiet that follows stillness, there is the first movement, a breath, a thought, a choice. And as it repeats, the sculpting begins. Your brain is not stone, but it is shaped like marble, layer by layer, with each intention, each motion, each thought, practiced and returned to. This is the nature of repetition. It does not shout. It whispers, again and again, until its rhythm becomes a groove, a pathway, a truth your brain remembers without asking. Neurons, the messengers of your mind, speak to one another through delicate connections. The first time a thought crosses from one to the next, it is a faint signal, like footsteps across untrodden snow. But if you return to that thought, if you feel it again, if you act on it again, the path becomes clearer. The snow begins to compress. A trail forms. This is long-term potentiation, the strengthening of connections through repeated use. It is how memory forms, how skills deepen, how habits take hold. And it is not just thoughts that repeat. Emotions, movements, reactions, the way you respond when someone speaks your name. The reflex to check your phone, to hesitate, to breathe deeply, to reach for something better. Each is a thread in your neural tapestry, woven not in a day, but in the steady rhythm of again. You become what you return to, and your brain, faithful, adaptable, alive, shapes itself accordingly. This is why practice matters, not only in learning a skill, but in becoming who you are. To practice kindness is to build the circuits of compassion. To practice stillness is to strengthen the muscles of patience. To practice courage, even in whispers, is to lay the neural groundwork for strength. No effort is wasted, even imperfect. The beauty of repetition is that it makes the unfamiliar familiar. What once felt like work becomes second nature. Neural pathways that were once tentative become highways of thought and behavior. And yet repetition is not always conscious. Sometimes the brain repeats old patterns not because they serve you, but because they are familiar. Fear, shame, avoidance, these too can become habits. But awareness changes everything. To notice a pattern is the first step in changing it. And once seen, it can be rewired, not by fighting it, but by gently offering the brain a new pattern to practice instead. Over time, what fires together wires together, and what is no longer used begins to fade. This is called synaptic pruning, a sculptor's chisel at work. The brain releases the connections that are no longer useful, making space for what matters more. You are not just building new pathways, you are clearing the old, letting go of what no longer fits, refining. Think of a trail through a forest. Each step clears the leaves. Each return makes the path easier to walk. Eventually, it becomes the obvious way through. Your thoughts work the same way. Your feelings, your instincts. And so, repetition becomes your teacher. It offers a choice, again and again. What will you practice? What kind of sculptor will you be? The brain does not judge. It simply follows the pattern. If you return to criticism, it sharpens that voice. If you return to gratitude, it amplifies that light. You have more power than you think. Not all at once, not by force, but in the quiet discipline of return. This is why rituals matter. Morning habits, evening reflections, the words you say to yourself when you wake, the breath you take before responding, the way you speak to your own mistakes. Each is a signal, each is a step, and your brain listens. Even now, as you lie here, quiet, resting, perhaps remembering the day, your brain is reviewing what repeated, what felt important, what felt emotional, what echoed, and it will remember those echoes. It will build around them. So what do you wish to echo? That question does not need to be answered tonight, only heard. You do not need to get it perfect. You only need to return to the thoughts that nourish you, to the feelings that guide you, to the actions that grow you. And with time, with patience, the unfamiliar becomes familiar. The difficult becomes graceful. The sculptor's vision emerges not from a single strike, but from thousands of loving taps. You may not see the change right away, but your brain feels it. It shifts, millimeter by millimeter, toward the person you are becoming. So repeat gently. Repeat kindly. Repeat with intention. Let your thoughts be soft footsteps on paths you wish to deepen. Let your actions be echoes of the self you are calling home. And as you drift now, as the day falls further behind, know that this moment, this breath, is one repetition too, a signal, a small sculpting, a promise. And as the repetition settles into silence, a question stirs quietly within you. Chapter 9. There is a quiet current beneath your thoughts, a feeling that pulls gently, even when you don't yet know where it leads. That current is purpose, and your brain listens to it like a plant turning toward light. Purpose is more than a goal, more than productivity or achievement. It is the feeling that your actions matter, that your life belongs to something beyond just surviving. And remarkably, your brain responds to this feeling not symbolically, but physically. In the presence of meaningful goals, your neural pathways reorganize. Regions like the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that plans, reasons, and envisions, light up with purpose-driven activity. And when this part is engaged, you make different choices. You delay gratification. You take consistent steps toward a future that may not yet be here, but feels worth walking toward. Even small goals, held with care and clarity, can create ripples through the mind. The brain begins to prioritize, to allocate resources. It says, "This is important. Let's build around it." And it does. Neuroplasticity, the soft reshaping of thought and structure, responds most deeply when your intentions are aligned with meaning. Your brain is not changed only by repetition, but by repetition in the direction of purpose. You are, in essence, carving a trail not only through your mind, but toward the life you long for. Purpose also strengthens your resilience. Research shows that people who feel a sense of purpose have lower levels of stress hormones, more stable, and even when you cannot see the path clearly, your brain still listens for direction. It asks quietly, "What am I moving toward?" Sometimes the answer is grand: to help, to heal, to build, to teach. And sometimes it's simple: to feel peace, to love well, to wake tomorrow and try again. There is no wrong direction. There is only awareness. When you name your why, you offer your brain a lantern, a signal to organize itself around that light. And that's the beautiful thing. Your purpose doesn't have to be found all at once. It's not something you chase, but something you notice in moments that feel full, in actions that leave you steady, in the quiet joy that whispers, "Yes, this matters." Your brain remembers those moments. It encodes them with extra attention. It flags them for future return. This is the work of dopamine, not just the molecule of pleasure, but the messenger of motivation. When you anticipate meaning, dopamine nudges you forward. It says, "Keep going." It rewards not only the outcome, but the pursuit itself. And in that pursuit, your brain changes. Connections strengthen. Focus sharpens. The distractions begin to soften. Purpose creates clarity. It trims away the unnecessary. It says, "Here is the thread. Follow it." And the more you follow, the stronger that thread becomes. Until one day, it feels like a path you've always known. Even your memories shift around purpose. The hippocampus, your brain's memory center, tags purposeful experiences with emotional weight. They stay longer. They color your identity. This is how you begin to see yourself differently. Not just as someone who thinks or feels, but as someone who creates, who contributes, who matters. And that shift, from surviving to mattering, is one of the most powerful rewrites your brain can make. Because the truth is, your brain is wired not just for safety, but for significance. It wants to be part of a story. It wants to belong to something more. Even when purpose feels far, the desire for it is already sculpting your mind, already laying down the roots for the direction you'll grow into. And in the neuroplastic brain, direction matters as much as destination, because every step sends a signal. Every action aligned with meaning becomes more efficient, more intuitive, more joyful. This is why meaningful routines feel so different from empty habits, why learning with purpose feels easier than memorizing without reason. Purpose gives learning a frame, and the brain fills that frame with color, with memory, with understanding. So tonight, as you rest, you might begin to feel the quiet thread of purpose weaving through your life. It might not have a name. It might not be finished, but your brain is listening. And with every breath you take in the direction of meaning, you are building something lasting, a network, a compass, a kind of inner gravity that guides your choices when the road ahead is uncertain. And even if that road is long, your brain is ready for it. Because plasticity is patient. It will follow wherever you lead. And so the question becomes not just, what do I want to do? But what matters enough to return to again and again until it becomes part of me? You don't need the whole answer tonight. You only need to listen, to rest in the knowing that purpose is a light your mind will move toward naturally, gently, with every step. And as that light flickers softly in your awareness, another question begins to glow at its edge. Breathe in. There is a hum in the silence, a soft signal that reminds you, you are not alone. Even now, in stillness, your brain remembers others, the voices you've heard, the faces you've loved, the shared laughter, and shared quiet. Your brain is deeply, beautifully social. It has grown through interaction. It has sculpted itself around the people you've met, around the moments of connection, however brief, however quiet. From the very beginning, connection is survival. A newborn's brain, fragile and unfinished, comes alive in the presence of another. The caregiver's voice, the rhythm of touch, the gaze that says, "You are here. I see you." These moments are not extras. They are blueprints. Through them, the brain wires itself for safety, for language, for empathy, for love. Even now, your adult mind carries the imprint of those early interactions. How someone held space for your feelings, how you learned to feel safe in presence or in absence. These experiences shape your attachment patterns, the emotional maps your brain draws to navigate closeness and distance, trust and fear. And though these maps begin early, they are not fixed. The brain is always listening, always open to revision through new experiences of care. This is the beauty of the social brain. Its plasticity is relational. It changes through safe connection. When someone listens, genuinely listens, your insula, the part of your brain that senses internal states, lights up. It tells you are being felt, understood, not just heard, but known. And this changes your physiology. Your heart rate steadies, your cortisol levels drop, your nervous system finds its rhythm again. This is called co-regulation, when one nervous system soothes another. When calm passes from one body to the next, like a quiet breeze. It happens in conversations, in long hugs, in the stillness of shared space where no words are needed. Your brain, in those moments, feels safe enough to rewire, to unlearn fear, to risk softness, to imagine trust. And the other brain feels it too. This is because of mirror neurons, special cells that fire not only when you act, but when you see someone else act. When you watch someone smile, your brain rehearses smiling. When you see sorrow in their eyes, your brain touches that sorrow too. This is the architecture of empathy, the foundation of compassion. You carry within your mind the capacity to feel with others in real and measurable ways. And the more you practice empathy, the stronger those circuits grow, not only emotional, but neural. Compassion is not just a virtue, it's a skill, a practice, a plastic pattern. And when practiced, it changes how you relate, how you parent, how you lead, how you love. Connection, at its core, is a mutual act of transformation. Even brief interactions can shift the brain. A stranger's kindness, a shared laugh, a look of understanding in a hard moment. These flashes may seem small, but your brain records them. They become part of its memory bank, part of the evidence that connection is possible. And over time, these moments accumulate like drops of water on stone, carving new pathways of trust and openness. You learn slowly that it is safe to be seen, that your story matters, that you can reach out and be met. And when you do, when you offer presence, when you witness without rushing, when you hold another gently in your attention, your brain grows too, because giving is also shaping. And your brain, like your heart, was made for reciprocity. Even in silence, you are connected. Even in solitude, your mind holds multitudes, memories of laughter, the rhythm of past conversations, the inner echo of a voice you once trusted. Social memory is strong. It lives not only in thoughts, but in your body, your posture, your tone, your habits of closeness or withdrawal. But again, none of this is final. Plasticity means you can learn new ways of relating, of softening, of staying present when it feels easier to pull away. Even loneliness, though painful, is a signal, not of failure, but of readiness. The brain longs for connection, and when it is given the chance, it responds. You do not need to be perfect in your connections. You only need to be real, present, willing to try again. And the trying, the reaching, the learning to stay, rewires your brain to feel safer in togetherness. Even now, as you lie in quiet reflection, Your brain is imagining the people who matter to you, the conversations you've had, the ones you hope to have. And even this imagination strengthens social circuitry. Visualization, it turns out, can activate the same areas of the brain as real experience. So when you picture someone with love, when you rehearse a future connection with openness, your brain begins preparing for it as if it were already on its way. This is hope coded in neurons, and it brings us full circle. Your brain changes through connection, and your connections are changed by the brain you are building. It is a loop, a gentle cycle of mutual growth. So as you drift tonight, you might feel a presence, not outside you, but within your own awareness, the part of you that has been shaped by others, the part of you that longs to belong. And as that awareness rests beside you, you may begin to sense a new question, rising like mist on the horizon. And now, let your breath settle into stillness. The stories your neurons carry can rest for the night. Their quiet work continues beneath dreaming. You are not broken. You are becoming. Your brain, your gentle, growing self, is always listening, always learning, always reaching toward connection, toward meaning, toward light. So sleep, and let the soft architecture of your thoughts rebuild in peace. Tomorrow your mind will remember the path you laid down tonight. Good night.